Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. Craig here. Today we're going to be looking at how we can create this 3D tilting effect, which is triggered by mouse movements. It's going to be a two-parter. The first one is going to be about getting the whole thing set up and working as we see here with the mouse movements. And then the second part, we're going to look how we can expand on that to get it working on mobile. It's not just about getting a responsive design and kind of, making sure it fits on the screen. That's something we need to obviously factor in. But we also need to think about how we can make this actually work in the absence of a mouse. So we'll take advantage of the gyroscope API, which isn't a complicated thing. It's really not. It sounds like it is, but it's really quite a simple process. But that'll all come in part 2 of the video. As a heads up, so you all know what to expect, we're going to be using Bricks Builder in WordPress to do this. However, we're not going to be using any of Bricks or WordPress features. We are going to be writing out the CSS and we're going to be writing out some JavaScript. So whether you're working in WordPress, whether you're working in something like Visual Studio Code to code out your website, you can do all of that. I will do a dedicated video from a purely kind of HTML perspective, maybe even do a React video if there's appetite for that. But hopefully if you watch this video and you understand how to structure the HTML, then you should be able to follow along and implement this in your HTML websites and even perhaps your React websites. It's all very transferable is what I'm saying. But for those that do use Bricks Builder, then something else I will do later on, perhaps in a third video, is I will take all this CSS and as much as possible I will move it all into the Bricks interface so that we're not writing CSS out. But regardless of what you're using and how you prefer to do this, I will share all the code and the snippets, and I will share the layout so that you'll be able to just very quickly get off the ground with this. Without further ado, let's get stuck into it, is it? All right, so let's move this out of the way and just keep it there for reference for later on. And then we'll get into here. I'm going to do just a very quick overview of what we've got to get started. Here's our CSS that we're going to be writing out. We've got a layout over here, starting with a section and a container. We've got our card, which is just a div. And then within that, we've got a couple of blocks, which one is a heading container and the other is content container. And these are just important for just getting these different layers right. So as you can see, the heading is floating above the image, and then we've got this layer which is the card, and then the third layer is created using a pseudo element. We don't need to actually create that as a component here or an element here. We will do that as a pseudo element. Then we've got the heading inside that, and then we've got our content, and that goes inside the content container, and that's just so that we can ensure that we get this drop shadow effect, because the way we've got to do some positioning here to get all this working right. And then in there, obviously we've got an image, a text, and we've got a hidden button. I've just noticed I've got some styling on there, or it's just the text. So the button there, that's hidden, and the reason for that is that button will only show up on mobile where they need to activate the device orientation. And they do that because on iOS 13 upwards, you need to give permission for the browser to access that gyroscopic data. So that's what that button does. But we'll get into that later on. We'll go into more detail on that. Okay, so let's clear all this out and we'll start afresh, is it? Rightio, so here we are. I've just gone back as far as this. I'm just going to quickly look at these for you, just so you know what we've got. We've got a section here which has just got 100% view height on it, so it fills the whole height of the page. There's a background color of it's a hexadecimal background color with all the 2s. So this dark grey color. Within the section, we've got a container. I'll just go back to there a minute, just so you can see we've got the justified content and our line items are set to center, so that our container fits in the middle of the page. And then we've got the container, and again we've got justify content and align items as set to center. Other than that, there's nothing else going on with that. So that's our kind of basic setup, okay? And all I'm going to do first, I'm just going to replicate what we had before and just sort of get the structure in place. And then from there, then we'll start doing the CSS and start styling things out. Right, so let's go and get ourselves, let's select our main container. Let's go over here. We're going to start adding some elements in. So let's start off by adding a div. This could just easily be a block for those that use Bricks Builder, but I'm just using div because it's kind of, you know, the most universally available item. A block is just a div with some predefined styles assigned to it. So, you know, a block's just as valid, but just to keep things clear for those who don't use Bricks Builder, I'm going to use divs, okay? Right, so we've got this here. This is our card, so I'm going to give all these names as we go along. That's going to become apparent why I do that a little later on. I like to do it anyway. I think it just helps, you know, understand where you're at. But this is not going to give it a class or anything for the moment. It's just visually it's giving us a name to work with. So within there we had two other divs. I did actually use blocks, and I'm going to do that because it comes with some predefined styles. But for those watching, it is just a div, but it just makes it a flex box. Let's just do that. And so for those watching this who don't use Bricks Builder, these are the predefined styles. It's got a flex, is a display type. There's no wrap. You can't see here because it's the default, but it's flex direction of column. And so that's just the default settings of a block. It's just a div, like I say, with those predefined settings. So this here is our, just going to look to my notes to see what I did call this. It's called heading container, I believe. Yes, heading container. And then we've got content container. Within here, we're going to go and select that. We're going to choose a heading. So there we go. That's in there now. And let's leave that as heading. That's fine. And within here, we're going to put another block. So that's that. We're going to select that block. And then we're going to go over and we are going to put the image in. We're going to put the rich text. And we're going to put a button. So let's open that up. There they all are. And yes, that's great. So this is the content image and content text. Okay, so that's that. So I am going to cheat a little bit. I am using Advanced Thema to enable me to kind of speed things up and will hopefully help us get through this video a bit quicker. But what we're going to do is attach some classes to this. And in case you're new to Bricks Builder, the way we do that is we come over here and we just click on some empty space and we start typing. And then we press return and that class gets assigned. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use a prefix. You haven't got to do this. This is just because it's one of my tutorials, so all my classes are going to start TU003 because this is tutorial 3. It's actually probably a bit more than that, but it's tutorial 3 in Bricks Builder, I think. So just so you're aware, but I'm not going to do it here. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to use a feature of Advanced Thema to do class converter. So I'm just going to close that. Just take note of that heading container, heading, content container, content, image, text button, yeah? That's because I named all of these boxes, okay? I named them all, and what Advanced Thema does is use that information to start building out some classes. This here is the prefix, and it's called cards. This is what you might name them as. You know, if you're building classes, whether it's in a different builder or whether you're doing it in a code editor, you might use this, but I'm just going to go up here and I'm going to add my TU003-card. Okay, and if I wanted to, I could come in here and rename these individually, see? But I'm not going to do that. This is exactly what I want. We don't need to worry about this. We haven't got any styles created. So I'm going to create those classes. So now what you'll see is if I select this, this has got a class applied to it. Select this, it's got a class applied to it. This, and all those classes were just created really quickly. So that's a great feature of Advanced Schema. And I can see already that there's a style there somewhere being applied on. I got a feeling our CSS is in place. Is it for, where's this styling coming from?
A few moments later.
My bad, there was no styling anywhere. It was just stuck in the cache because I had done a practice run of this, and so some of the styles were still stuck around in the cache. So I've just cleared that and we're back to where we should be. So the next thing we're going to do is we're just going to start kind of building this out how we want it to look a little bit. So let's go in here, let's go and find an image. And I used, was it in here? Yeah, there we go. Insert that image. There's that. Let's go and give this card some. So we're going to start. Let's just leave it at that for now. That's all our content. And we could start styling this out within Bricks Builder, but the issue is we can't do everything within the Bricks Builder itself. We have to do some custom CSS. And so I just feel like, you know, for me, I like writing, I prefer writing CSS than going through all these different menus. I feel it's a quicker process. But like I say, later on, I will do a follow-up video that kind of moves all of this into Bricks Builder, into all these menus here, so that for those that prefer to do it that way, you'll know exactly what to do. So let's go to the CSS for, we've got the class selected here and we're on the card. So we're on the card, the main parent element. We've got the class selected. I'm going to go to wrong one, CSS there, and we're going to start writing out some CSS. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start off with this. Now, for anybody who doesn't know Bricks Builder, what this means, it's not the same as writing this, which is what we do when we're creating CSS variables, typically speaking. It's not the same as that. What this means is we are referring to whatever it is we're working in. So we're in the card and we've selected this class. So this year refers to this class. And it is a shortcut for this class name. So TU003-card, and that comes in handy later on because we haven't got to write out the whole class name if we don't want to. If you've got a particularly long class, you'll just see in a little while. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to give it some width, just to kind of constrain its size a bit. I'm going to use rems, rem, there we go. So there we go, we get into a more sensible size. I'm also going to give it a max width to ensure that because we're rotating around, it can bleed over the edge of the screen and what have you. And when we go onto mobile, we don't want it to be too big. So we're going to say max width of 70%. So no matter what display we're on, we're doing that. We need to give it a position of relative because we're going to be positioning things inside this container absolutely later on. And then I think that's it for that now. Everything else is to do with the 3D, and we're going to do the 3D stuff a little bit later on. We're just going to kind of get some of the other stuff done first. So the way I like to write my CSS, I like to nest my CSS. I'll nest something out now and I'll show you the alternative way of doing that so you can properly see. Tell you what, let's do it the traditional way first. So let's do our next thing we're going to do our heading container. So that is the traditional way of writing this would be TU003-card because we're referring to a class, and then we're saying heading container, yes. However, we can, as a shorthand, use this. We can replace that part of the class name, because that's what all that's saying is, it's saying that. Okay, so we can do that. Let's do that. And what we're doing here, we're positioning this absolutely. Absolute. And then we are going to say that it's from the top 0.5 rems. That's why it's not working, because we've not named it correctly. There we go. I thought there was something a little bit awry there. So as you can see, we've done that, and this is the traditional way of doing it, and this is fine. This is a perfectly fine way of doing it. But sometimes we might want to be a bit more implicit, and we might want to kind of say root, and then sort of, so that we're kind of specifying that we want to reference this class only when it's inside of this. So we might have instances where this heading container exists outside this card, yeah? So we write it inside. So let's do this more literally. TU003-card. We're going to copy that a minute. Let's just do this a bit more literally. So sometimes we write our CSS like that. So we're saying that we want to reference this only when it's inside this. Okay? And another way of doing that in modern CSS is to take this and put it inside this. And so now what we're saying is only apply these styles to a class named this when it's inside an object with a class that's named this. Hope that makes sense. And that's just kind of like how I like to do this is. So, oops. Let's just go backwards on that, yeah? But as we're keeping things simple, let's just keep it outside here and push that back one. There we go. To move multiple lines like that, we just press the tab button with it tab key when it's selected. To go backwards, we just do shift and tab, and it'll take us back. So that's that. And now we're going to actually deal with the heading and just sort of style that out. And let's go back here and do a shortcut for getting this root in there is R plus tab, and then that gets us our root element on the screen. So first thing I want to do is let's do this a little bit. I'm going to copy these because there's a bit to type there is, and I don't want to drag this out forever. So and I'll walk you through it. So what we are saying here, we're applying, as you can see, it's turned into a bit of a glassmorphic effect now, yeah? We've done that by saying the background color is transparent. We applied a backdrop filter of blur, and I've said 15 pixels. You can play around with this and make it whatever size you want. I recommend you do. And then to make sure that works on iOS devices, we're using this WebKit backdrop filter, blur 15 pixels, and then we've got a background image, and we're using a linear gradient. This here is the direction of the gradient. So I'm going to actually set this to 180 so it goes from top to bottom. Okay, and then use the colors, and I'm using 2 different colors. Well, there's a reason actually why I was doing that. So I'm going to leave it as, what was it, 130 was it? Something like 120. Let's do 120. I'm using 2 colors here, and one is black and one is white, and the idea is you can't see it so much on such a small thing, but it kind of gives the impression of light. The white is up here and the black is down here, and it sort of gives the impression that light is coming from the top here. So that's sort of giving it some shape and what have you. We're going to apply some text color. I'm just going to do like a dark grey. And then I want to apply some padding. I think I did 1 rem. Oops. But that inline, wasn't it? Sorry, I didn't want the whole thing. So inline is left and right. And you've got block, which is up and down, top and bottom. So we don't want to do that. So padding, and then we want some border radius on this. Border radius. Oh. Border radius. Oh. You can't do that because once you've got that radius, I'm pressing tab to get that to finish. And so I think I set this. Oh yes, it's only 12 pixels on this one. So that just gives it a bit of a rounded edge. And I think as well, I did text align on this, but not necessarily required. That isn't, I don't think. Text align center. And now I think what we need to do is go back up here and set this to be like display flex. And then we want to justify content and say center. No? Align items center. There we go. That's what we really wanted. We don't need that. So that's that. We've got the heading there. Do you need anything more on that? Not for now. We've got the 3D side of things to do. But for the moment, we are as far as we need to be for the heading. So now we're going to get the content area done. So let's go back down here and say root. And we're saying content container, I think we want to work on. Content container. And that's going to have a position of relative. It's going to have a border radius, remembering that we can't use our shortcut because it just puts our root element in there. Border radius of, I think, 20 pixels is what I've chosen. Again, you can play around with these numbers, to your heart's content. So that's that. And then we're going to, again, we need to do some stuff with regards to 3D, but our 3D space. But for now, we're just going to do, again, root element, content. So yeah, border radius. We're going to use inherent on this border radius. I'm going to say inherit. There we go, and so we should start to see that. Nope, so now we need to do overflow hidden. Overflow hidden. Oops. And now we've got some nice rounded corners there. And then I'm also going to apply a background to this because we've not got that anywhere. Background is white. And then finally, we want to do, again, root, content text. And that's just got some padding, I think, of 1 rem. Let's go and have a little look. For some reason, that's not. We're spelling that right, aren't we? Content text. So we've got that right. Let's just go down here. What's the Oh, it's just called text. So I want to change that class, but it is what it is for now. I should have done that earlier on. We can change it quite easily, but we're not going to change it. We're just going to leave it as that text. And the final thing to do is the button. And I'm going to assume I made the same mistake with that. And we want to say display. So let's get this right a minute. So we want to, with this, I want to say that this is going to have a position of absolute. It's going to have a top of 50%. It's going to have a left of 50%. And this is kind of going to get it to the middle. So as you'll see, but it's a little bit off center because the middle is this corner here. That's what the top of this is 50% from the it's in the middle now, and the left edge of this is in the middle, so from there to there, so that space there is 50% of the width. What we need to do now is use a transform and translate. So transform, we're gonna just go down and I'm gonna say translate y minus 50% of its own height. And you can see it pop up a little bit, and then we're going to say, notice I didn't put a semicolon on the end there because we're just writing this across multiple lines but it's one actual instruction. I'm going to say translate X, and it's a capital X and a capital Y, notice. I'm going to say again minus 50%. And now we're going to put the semicolon there. Oops, make sure we don't get rid of the bracket. And so that's that. And the final thing we're going to do, because we don't want this showing up unless it needs to, is we're going to say display none. There we go. So that's our card set up. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to get into setting, making it a 3D element. So let's have a look. So we're right at the top here. The first thing we're going to do, because we're going to need these in a little minute, we're going to use root, but not the root we've been using. We're going to use root to set some variables, and those variables are, I'm going to jump into my notes, and we're going to see we want something I called. Tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to copy and paste them all in rather than typing them all out. And these are all custom variables, CSS variables. If you're not sure what they are, we're going to learn in a little minute how we use these. But essentially, they can become a single place where we can set values to things without having to set them in multiple places across our site. So the first thing we want to do is we need to, this is positioned relatively already, so we need to give this a transform style. There we go. Preserve 3D. So this ensures that whatever happens now is it respects the fact that we're now working in a 3D space. So that's not really done a lot. We're going to transform it, and we're going to transform on, we're going to set some perspective. So I'll try and put a card on the screen which will do a better job of explaining perspective than I will. But in a roundabout way, in the most basic, simplest term, perspective is when we're working in a 3D space, it's the distance between the object and I guess the edge of the screen, or the surface of the screen, kind of. And if you imagine, if you got a wall or something behind you now, when you move your head and you're looking at your monitor, the wall and the monitor seem to, because of the perspective, because of the distance between you, the monitor, and the wall, they all seem to sort of move, and it's that parallax effect, isn't it? And it ensures that you've got some distance in order for that 3D effect to kind of to be seen. The smaller the number, the less things will seem to move. The bigger number, depending on how far the distance between the individual items are, the more they'll appear to move. But it will, if you only got one item on the page, it doesn't really sort of matter too much. But when you've got multiple items on multiple layers, then it is an important factor. But I'll link a video which will do a better job of explaining that in kind of quite detail and really kind of help you understand it. So we're going to set a perspective, and the perspective value we've got is I've set it up here. So here's our custom variable. So let's copy that. And the way we didn't want to paste it, we wanted to copy it. And the way we use that is we say var, and then we just paste that value in there. And nothing really changes when we do that because we've not applied any other kind of 3D kind of properties yet. And we probably won't really see a lot. What I would say is for you to sort of play around that number. 1000 is normally a good number to start with. It can go up a lot more. But you kind of need to have a bit of a play around with the 3D space to kind of really understand what's going on. That video should hopefully help you understand more. We're going to do this across multiple lines again, so let's move this down one. Let's do that, and the next thing we want to do is we want to rotate things. So we're going to rotate, let's do that, and then Y, and rotate Y is VAR, and we not CAR because that's a car. And we're using, again, we've got this variable set up here. And the reason we do that is because we can change these as we need to. And look now, and look at the way it's kind of looks skewed because it's the perspective is coming into play here. Let's see what happens if we change this to 500 and see how that really kind of, you're really close to it now, you are. And if we change this to 5000, then it's very subtle. You're a long way away from it. So let's change that back to 2500. Do you know what? I'm going to see it to 2500 because that's what I've kind of, done my dry run with, and I don't want to kind of get stuck into tweaking things later on. I'd recommend you go and change them. And just to sort of show you as well, let's get the other one on there first. Rotate. Let's just do that, and then rotate X. We want to again do VAR. And we're copying that one. So now look, it's tilted backwards as well. And if we change these numbers, let's change that to 55 degrees. It gets more tilted. Let's change this to 90 degrees. It's going to become flat. We can't see it now. Let's set it to 85. So there we go. So that's what these numbers are doing. Now I decided that because of the mobile situation, I'm going to set it to 15, and later on you'll sort of see why I've done that, because it's kind of like a subtle starting point for when you're using mobile. So 15 degrees, and that's that. And I think that's all we need to do on the main card. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to create our kind of what I'm calling the floor. So we're going to do, and this is using our pseudo element. So we're saying colon before. Right. Okay. So that has broken things. That's okay. We'll fix that later as we go along. When we're working with pseudo elements, the first thing we've got to do is give it some content. This can actually contain something. So if we put words in here, will it show up on the page? You can just about see it here, hopefully. Let's give it some color, is it? And just so you can see. Color white. Oh, we've not put a semicolon on the end of there. So there you go. So there's some content, yeah, but we don't want anything in there really. We just need it to be empty. There needs to be something. So we're going to get rid of that color. And what I am going to do is I'm going to give it a background color. And first, I'm just going to give it a, like, I don't know, yellow. Can't see it because we're not giving it any size. So let's look at giving it some size. Let's give it a position absolute. There we go. And then we're going to use inset. Inset is to say that we want to position this. It's shorthand for saying top, bottom, left, right, and all of those should equal the same value. And I'm going to say 25 pixels. Sorry, minus 25 pixels. So that's setting it 25 pixels inward. We can't see it, but if we change this to a minus, we're now going to see our yellow box. So I'm going to border radius. If I put a border radius on we have not got a border radius on this. That's fine because we don't necessarily need one on there. Let's give one here though, border radius. It's not going to work, of course, because we haven't put a semicolon there. Border radius of, again, 20 pixels. There we go, that's nice. And then I'm going to copy the colors over. Let's see what we've got. Let's make sure we get our fallback for those really old browsers that don't support these type of gradient colors. So there's our backdrop, and it's not really got any distance yet. And that's because we need to. Now, what you saw me do earlier on is, I'll tell you what I'm going to do, is we're going to very quickly, let's change this back to block a minute. So a button we set the position from the top 50%, and then we used transform translate Y to move it up 50%. Yeah, and translate Y means just to kind of move it from its current position. It's still kind of over here, and some funky things can happen if we're not careful when we're using translate. But that's what it does, yeah? That's moving. Translate Y is up and down. Translate X is back at left and right. Well, there's another translate. So where were we? We were on our pseudo element here. And we're going to add this last bit in, and we're going to do transform translate Z. And translate Z is the back and forth. And what you can see has happened now. Oh, hang on, let's get that back. If we were to remove that and we watch the middle of the screen, it all moves closer together, yeah? Let's put it back in, and it's going to drop away. And now it's not really got the full 3D effect yet because we're not moving yet, and we've not given that drop shadow. Let's take care of that next, is it? Let's go ahead and so we've done this, the next thing we're going to do is the heading container, I think. So yeah, the heading container, what we're going to do is we're just going to tell this to also preserve 3D. So we're going to copy this transform style onto our heading container. And we are also going to use, let's just tidy that up a minute because that's in the wrong place. That's where we want it. We're also on, so the heading container gets the transform style of preserve 3D. And now what we're going to do is the translate Z, sorry, we're going back here. Translate Z is using a variable of floor distance, and that is up here. So we can, let's change this just to, I'll tell you what, let's go and chuck in something crazy like there you go, it's really dropped away now. So that's that now. So that's where we've applied that. And so what we're going to do on the heading container has got the preserve 3D, and now what we're going to do on the actual heading itself is do transform, and we're going to do translate Z, and we're going to go forward this time. We're going to lift the heading off the page. I think I did 25 pixels before, and there we go, it's back on the page. So that's that. And then the last thing to do is just give the content container its shadow. So let's copy that. And once again, we want to give this some content. We want to position it absolutely. It's because of this that because we're positioning this absolutely, the container, we put this content inside another div so that this forces the size of this. There's probably other ways of doing it, but we wanted to ensure that this was, we're doing that wrong for a start off. We want that to be before. We wanted to make sure this year stayed its full size when we applied the different positioning, and so this year forces this to be the correct size. So let's go back to where we were. Sorry, we're jumping around. I do apologize for that. So where we content container before, we're positioning that absolutely. We are going to inset that. First off, let's give it a background color. And what I'm going to do just for the moment, let's give this time red. You can't see it. Let's do an inset, and we're going to set it again. I'm going to do -20 pixels for now. Oops. And there you go. You can see it. Actually, I don't need to because it will show up on top anyway. So let's do, what do I want? 1 rem, something like that. Yeah, -1 rem. Yeah, I just want 1 rem. This is not 1 rem px or remp. There we go, 1 rem. So there it is. And what we want to do here now is we're going to say, let's move it back. Transform translate Z. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to do a calculation here. We could have, let's just go back to the top minute to our variables. The floor distance I've said is 50 pixels away. So what we want is our shadow to be 1 pixel above that. Now we could set it to a hard coded number to 49, but then if we change this value, then we'd have to then go and change the value for the shadow as well. So instead, we're going to use a calculation. So where are we? We want to be down. Where is it? Here it is. Or before, we're going to say calc VAR. So now that equals 50 pixels. Now staying in just outside that, so we got, if you look at the blue lines underneath the brackets, or the parentheses as you Americans like to call it, that's the one related to translate Z. That's the one related to calc. So we want to be inside the one related to calc. And we're going to say +1 pixel. And we have to say pixel like that. So now we should be, oh, for some reason we are not. We've got anything else we're missing here? Position absolute, inset -1, border radius. We do want to do that. Let's do that here. Not that that's going to fix us. I think we can do inherit. We're saying 1 rem. Why is that not going back? Of course, we've not told this to preserve 3D. So let's go and put that in there. Okay, we've kind of lost sight of it now. So let's go up here a minute, and we're going to change this to 25. And now you can see it underneath. Let's go 35, is it? Let's change this to 35. And so you can see our shadow there. Now, I'm thinking that that could perhaps be a bit bigger. So let's do this as 0.5 rem to bring it closer to our edges. Or perhaps we just say 0 and make it exactly that. Or do we go, let's do 0. So it's now exactly the same size. We perhaps ought to do something like perhaps a minus 0.5 RAM, something like that, just to make it a little bit bigger. Yeah, maybe we'll do that. And that's not much of a shadow though, is it? So what we're going to do here, we are going to apply a filter. We're going to blur it. And we're going to say 15 pixels, not 159 pixels, 15 pixels. And then we're also going to apply some opacity. And that's going to be opacity of 0.65 or 65%. And now the only thing left to do is change that to black. And that is our finished card. Right, so hopefully you're still with me and you've got this beautiful looking card there. Let's go and change a few values back up here, back down to, I think I originally decided it was going to be 12 degrees. I don't know what I said earlier on in the video, but 12 degrees, it just feels like a nice number when you load it up on mobile and the mobile button hasn't been pressed. Let's go and change the text on that button actually. Let's make sure we've got it selected. Go to content and let's say click to enable animation. This is probably not the best thing to do, but you do need an interactive button, you do. But we're not going to be dealing with that today. We'll talk more about that in the next video. Let's just go back to here a minute and switch it off. Just a little bit of tidying up. Where was our button? It was down by here. And I spelt that wrong. That should have been block, not bock. But it didn't matter. It just errored and just turned it on anyway. Wouldn't that mean none? So that's off the page now. Right. The next thing to do is go and look at the JavaScript for this and get that working. And then we can kind of wrap up for the day. We'll just, and we'll come back for the other bit in the next video. But before we get into the JavaScript, just going to remind you, if you are enjoying this, if it is useful to you, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell to make sure you don't miss the next video, which hopefully will drop tomorrow. And then the third video, which will kind of really tidy all this up and kind of move it all into the bricks interface, or as much as possible. So all that said, let's go on with writing some JavaScript, is it? I'm going to just go through it line by line rather than typing all of this out. And again, I will make this code available for you. It'll be in the first comment. But for now, we're going to kind of go through it. Let's start at the top. So this is going to be a bit of a kind of like a dummy's guide, kind of starting from the very basics, because I just want this to be accessible to everybody. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to declare a variable called card. Now variables, they can be anything you want. We're calling it card because that makes sense. That's what we're getting. But we can call it, we could call this bacon if we wanted to, and that would work also. The only rules to this is that it can't be a already used variable, or it can't be in use by JavaScript. So you couldn't use the word const, you couldn't use the word document, you couldn't use the word function. You could use this word, but it's already in use. And this is a function name that we've declared. And so you know, as long as it's not already in use, you can call this what you want. We're getting the card, so we're going to call it card. And what we're going to do is say the card equals document. So we're talking about the whole web page. Do a query selector, and query selector means to find a HTML element on the page, and then depending on how we declare it, so this knows it's a class we're looking for because we've used a full stop. If we'd written a hash, it would look for an ID, and we can do data attributes and various different things as well. So this is going to find the very first instance of this. So if you've got multiple cards, you would need to approach this ever so slightly differently. We're not going to get into that today, but this will select the very first item that it comes across with this class. Right, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add an event listener to the document, and an event listener is just like the browser's listening for certain actions. With buttons, we have click, that the event is a click, and so it's listening for clicks on certain buttons. In this instance, we're doing a mouse move. So every time the mouse moves, it's going to trigger a callback. And a callback is just a function, and we're declaring what that function is here, and we're referring to this function here. It's going to automatically pass in the event. We're saying E here for event, but we could say event, and perhaps I ought to have done that, but I just said E because it's shorthand and it's kind of quite a common convention. But we haven't even got to call it E or event. We could again call this bacon, and that would equally be as valid. Whatever this is, whatever the event is, gets passed into this position here, this argument. So this has been passed in, and so will be available to us throughout this entire function. We're not going to use it just yet. First thing we're going to do is declare a new variable called max tilt. We'll look at what this is in a minute. It's a number for now, 35, and that's 35 degrees essentially. So let's put a little comment there, is it? 35 degrees. It can be any number you want. Later on we'll look at what it's doing. It's a number that I've chosen. And as it says there, max tilt, it's basically the max number of degrees the card will tilt. And I've said 35. So, position of mouse relative to the window. So we're going to assign a new variable called X and a new variable called Y, and we're using the event that's coming through here. So now we're using this. This contains all kinds of information. If you wanted to see that information, if you was to write console.log here and write E, and I tell you what, let's do that, is it? Let's do that. Let's make sure something we haven't done yet is we haven't saved that. Let's go to our demo page. I don't know what this is going to be like now. Yep, it's still working. Great. That means, you know, JavaScript's working. We've built our thing right. If we inspect this, we right click on anywhere on the page and we inspect. This is in Edge. This is the same as in Chrome. So any Chrome based browser, which includes Edge and Brave and a whole bunch of other browsers. And we can come up here and we can click on the console, and as you can see here, here's our mouse event. So let's have a little look at it, is it? There's a load of stuff in here. So this is the event. So whenever we do anything, you know, if we did a click, then it would contain all the information about the click. But this is about the mouse event. Is it trusted? Does it bubble? An issue that, you know, we'll talk about another day. But client X and client Y, that's the one we're interested in, 806 and 174. So where is it on the screen? So let's shrink that down, and what we'll do is we'll look at that also. So where's our fluent snippets gone? So let's get rid of that console log. And down here, I'm going to switch on console log the X coordinate. So client X, so X equals the event dot client X. Okay. So let's update that. Let's go back here and refresh the page. And as you can see, as we move across, our X values are going higher and higher and higher. Yeah. And we should get to about, there you go, 808. That means the page is what, 809 pixels wide? Something like that. We go all the way across here and it's going to get closer and closer to 0. We get to 1, sorry. So that's that. So we've got our, and I'm going to remove these because they're taking up space. They're not required. So now we're going to find the position of the window, or the center position of the window. So X center is the position, the vertical line that runs down the page, if you imagine that. So what we're saying is get the window, the inner width, and divide it by 2. Okay, so this is, as we saw, is about 809 pixels wide. So it's going to be 404.5 pixels wide. So that's what that X center is going to be. And just for your, let's update that. Let's go here. refresh, and as we do it, X center was actually must have been actually bang on 810 rather than 809 because we're getting 405, and that will always be 405 because the page width isn't changing. If we move this on the other hand, now it's saying 455 because we've changed the width of the screen. Make it smaller, 322.5. Okay, so that's that. So like I said, we're getting both the X center and the Y center, and so the Y center would be the line that runs across here, separating the top from the bottom. And all these are just numbers that we're collecting at the moment. So we've got the X position, so we know where our mouse is. We now know where the middle of the screen is. Let's get rid of this. So now we're going to work out the offset. And what the offset is if we've got this line running down here, this is what we've got displaying on the page at the moment. So the X offset, X center, X offset is essentially a number between 0 and 1. So what percentage of the distance that we traveled from the center to the edge of the screen. So when we get out here, as you can see, there's this number here, X offset is very close to 1 there. We perhaps, because the arrow, we're never going to get it there, but we get very close to 1. And so that's a percent, that can be turned into a percentage, yeah? But we want it in this format. We're not going to turn it into a percentage. We want it in that format, in that decimal place below 1 or between 0 and 1. So our X offset is that. And it's the same for the Y offset. So the Y offset would give us the, sorry, let's have a look at the X offset a minute. So as you see, as we go left, it becomes a negative number. So when we get over here, it should be like negative 99 point. Does it actually get to? We actually got to 1, so it's negative 1. Okay. So there's our offsets. Let's get rid of that. Are we using that? Are we? We'll leave it on the screen for a minute because I want to see how that translates for you. The next thing we're going to do is going to calculate the rotation. So this number, let's say that we are halfway. Let's say we are positioned about here. There you go. If you look at the offset now, if we look at the one that kind of is here, yeah, if you look at this number, it's obviously going to change. It's going to move up. What I mean is, relative to my mouse movement, this offset here is about 0.5, yeah? So what the math now is the max tilt. So we're going to say 0.5 multiplied by the max tilt, which is 35. So what that's saying is when we get to here, we want to be 35 times 0.5, which is what, 17.5, yeah? So 17.5 degrees. So that's our X rotation. Now I've done, so this one here, let's move it up, is it? I think if we, yep, so on Mac, that's Option and arrow up will move the line up. So this is our left to right, okay? Let's put that there, left to right. This is our top to bottom. So if our Y rotation, what we're doing is we're saying, so all of this has been declaring variables, yeah? Let's get rid of this console log. Let's get rid of that console log. I said it was 17 lines of code, didn't I? Let's see if we're anywhere near right. So we're up to 19 and we've got all these comments as well. So 18, 17, 16, 15 lines of code in actual fact. So we're declaring lots of variables so far, just working out our position, and now we're finally going to do something. So up here, we got our card, and now we're going to actually use it. How frustrating. So there's our card. We're going to set a style, and the prop. So we're going to go to style, set property. We could get property also. we're going to set property. The property is we're going to set that variable value, so dash dash rotate y. As a reminder, what we're referring to is this number here that we set. So it starts off as 12 degrees when the page loads, but here we are now setting it in line on the page so we're setting that property, and then we're concatenating, joining together our X rotation, which we got here, with the string degrees. So we say the plus symbol in JavaScript you say something plus something. If it's two numbers, it will do math, but if there's a string involved, then it will just join them together. Okay, so that, and we'll see that work in a moment. And then this is our up and down. Okay, now our up and down, if we just, I'm going to remove this a minute, I'm going to show you what happens rather than try and talk about it. Let's go here, let's refresh our page. And now look, as we move down, it tilts up, and we move up, it tilts down. Okay, that's just because the math that's going on, and so we need to invert it. And the way we do that is we say -1 multiplied by that, and that just inverts the number. It just flips the number over on its head. So a minus number becomes a positive number, and a positive number becomes a minus number. Did I save that? No. Let's go back here, refresh it, and now as we move down, it's going the right way. Okay? And that's it. We're done. So if we look at what we've done so far, as we move the mouse around, it does exactly what we promised it would do. As you can see, the heading there is moving along with it as well. So that's about it, really. I don't think there's anything more to do. We've all tidied up now. I said it was going to be 17 lines of code, like I said, but we've got these comments in here taking up space. I think it's 15 lines of code in total. So hopefully you was able to keep up with that, and you managing to get it implemented yourself. Tomorrow we will look at how we implement this on mobile. So like I said before, subscribe, bells, and I'll see you soon. Take care. Peace out.